Thoughts on stock selection for the married put and other bullish strategies. Now, this question came to us from Bill. Bill's taking a look at WPM, Wheaton Precious Metals. This is a position that Ernie is currently in the Fusion portfolio at RadioActive Trading. Bill sent me an email and said, I received a brief on WPM this morning. The stock looks promising, and I'm considering adding it to my portfolio as a married put structure following the rules in the blueprint. Buying a put that's slightly in the money, 150 to 200, maybe 300 days out in time to keep a controlled risk to say 6, 7, or 8%. Now, although he says the stock's not breaking out in the classic investor's business daily sense, it hasn't just jumped up above the upper Bollinger Band and starting to rise in that fashion. Bill says the MACD is crossing over to the positive side and appear to have gotten a bounce on earnings. Now, Bill says, I'm not sure how much more upside there is for this stock, but I'd be glad to hear your thoughts on it. Not as investment advice, but with regards to the married put strategy for the longer term play. So what we have here is Bill looking at something that he's interested in, starting to show a positive MACD. What are my initial thoughts on this? Well, as Bill mentioned, Ernie just entered a brief in the Fusion portfolio regarding the open WPM married put position that Ernie's been trading for several months. Meaning that Ernie's staying in WPM. He added a brief for the Fusion subscribers about what he saw and what he thought with the earnings report that came out and what his expectations potentially are going forward. So he still sees further upside this position as well. Otherwise, he might be exiting the trade, not staying in it if he has any bearish sentiment or if he thinks the stock's going to lag and just hesitate. Now, as you might have seen, many mining stocks have had positive moves recently. I'm also in Newmont Mining, NEM, which had a 2.5 point jump yesterday, which actually caused some problems, could have caused problems for me, I should say. We'll talk about that in a moment. Many of these stocks, the mining stocks, gold, silver, and other things, were also buoyed up by the bank crisis and the bank fears. Where's your safety going to be if you feel that the banks, as we've seen with the different VIB, SLVB, the discussion today, of course, about First Republic and the failure of the buyout that didn't go through. TD backed out of it. I believe it was TD, Toronto Dominion, that backed out of the First Republic purchase. Where's a safe haven in those cases? The safe haven is going to move back into gold and silver. It's going to buoy the mining stocks as well. Of course, we also had the unemployment report, the jobs report today, which also caused great movement. But let's just look at the chart itself, because that was related to Bill's question. Looking at the recent move, what we've seen is the stock did just move above the SMA 20. Now, that doesn't always mean it's a breakout. What Bill was referring to more as a breakout is something such as this over here. When a stock jumps above the upper Bollinger Band and then closes above it the second day, that's usually considered the Bollinger Band breakout. Our two long option search, the long call and the long put, have a Bollinger Band default screen that's available. And so in that case, that's what we're seeing with those movements. That's what Bill was referring to as the breakout. But what we're seeing here is the stock has just recently moved back above the SMA 20, showing some strength after a hesitation. And we're close to seeing a positive MACD movement on the position. That's what we're looking at with Bill's WPM question. Is it a good position? Well, let's take a look at it this way. The Newmont Mining position I'm in has had a similar move, of course, in this scenario, meaning that we fell below the 20-day moving average, and then the stock in the last few days has popped above that, and the MACD has started to show potentially crossing back into the positive as well. We had the 49 call sold for today, and the stock popped above that yesterday, went to about 49.50, had a pullback today. Thankfully, it was in the money yesterday. We had a better opportunity to roll it in that scenario. We've got a good position there. We've got a good movement, and we were able to roll the position. But let's go back to Bill's discussion. For bearish, neutral, or bullish positions, We've discussed stock selection before. If you go to the YouTube channel, you can just plug in stock criteria as a particular search, and you'll see some various discussions on stock selection for naked cash secured puts, thoughts on criteria for married puts plus hedging a tech portfolio, stock repair and stock criteria for the married puts, stock criteria for options, earning plays, and there's several more. In addition to that, if you do a search for the married put criteria as well, you'll see the preferred put criteria discussion of Greeks, why they're not necessarily used in more, married put topics, income method number 1, thoughts on criteria for the married put criteria plus radioactive alternatives, and more. So there's an opportunity, other situations, and other presentations. But when we're looking about a married put position, opening a married put trade, what is the goal of a married put? Well, just like it is with any other trading strategy, the goal is to profit with protection in place in case a stock goes against you and doesn't do what you expect. And of course, by able to control risk and leave the upside open, you can stack the market odds in your favor. What I look for specifically is a stock that I feel has the potential to move up 3 to 6% in the next 20 to 40 days, and another 4 to 8% bullish movement in the following 60 to 90 days. This is a bullish strategy. I need the stock and I want the stock to move up. It's not bullish to neutral, but I have the protection in place. If I'm wrong, I'm not risking more than 6 to 8% of the total investment on the position. We do like to look for that positive MACD position. We do like to see that. And when opening a married put, we also look for the other criteria, not only just for the put structure, but also for the bullish movements we'd want to see. Stock trading above the 20-day moving average and a positive MACD. Let's take a look at the last few married put positions that I opened in the Fusion portfolio. NEM was originally opened on September 30th at 42.32. As we can see, when that position was opened, the stock had just moved above the 20-day moving average, and we were seeing a little bit more of a gap in the MACD. Now, this one exceeded expectations within a few short days. The stock was open at 42.32. The stock reached up above $45. So a movement of about $2.70 or so. That's within that sort of 3 to 6% range that I'm looking for. We were able to do adjustments here, generate income, lower the risk on the married put position. Well, the stock fell back, but then it pulled back up again as well. We were able to continue the trade over time. Now, at this point, NEM is trading, as I mentioned, right around $49. It's up 15%, but we're in a position where we can potentially make 11% with the married put in place with the various income methods we've done over time. Another position, AMD, not doing too good, but on March 17th, following the search in PowerOptions, we opened AMD at 96.45. What did we have here? Well, again, just what we saw before. What we looked for in that case, the stock had a positive MACD trend, didn't get in down here when it just moved above the SMA 20 and has a positive MACD trend. We got in a little bit later, but the stock did move up to 102. We did still see the 3 to 6% movement in the first 20 to 40 days. It did trail off after that, and those of you who might have been following AMD didn't have a positive earnings, dropped down to about 78, 79 recently, about a 10% movement down the other day, but it gained about 4.5% back on that. I think it's around $86, $87 right now. We're going to adjust this position with the put option, taking the profit off the put, and then going forward as well. Other trades that were recently opened, of course, ASO opened on March 23rd, 2023 at 63.66. Again, we see a positive MACD, but we didn't get in right here at the break that Bill was talking about. But We do have a scenario here. We were up above the SMA 20, and again, the stock moved from our price at 63.66 to 68.50. So we were able, of course, to see that 3 to 6% movement that we wanted in those scenarios. Fortinet on March 24th opened at 62.29. I'm sorry, 62.99. Right around there with that positive MACD. Stock was here. And then within that 20 to 40 days, see the stock up to about 68, 67. Again, saw that 3 to 6% movement that we wanted in those first 20 to 40 days. Similar to that, the position that's closed. Closed trade on SCHW at 82.04. On December 22nd, what did we have? Nearing that MACD crossover that Bill is talking about, stock is above the SMA 20. In the first 20 to 40 days, stock's trading at 86, and then it fell apart. We were able to do some adjustments and lower the risk on this trade. However, we're out of this trade, we're out of this scenario because of the recent bank fall and the recent bank decline. And what ended up happening in that scenario is the stock fell down as low as, I think, almost $51. Stock was down about 30%. We got out with just a 6.5% loss in the trade. So we'll call that a win. We are meeting our goals that we initially structured with this stock selection process. And using the MACD bill is a useful criteria. But how can we set the criteria in PowerOptions? Well, it's very simple. We can start with the default criteria, and we can make adjustments to it as we move forward. We talked about our goals for what we want to see when we open a new married put position. We talked about the default search criteria that we'd use following the rules in the blueprint. Bill's question was about the WPM position now that he's possibly seeing a MACD positive crossover and the stock moving above the SMA 20. How would we find these positions? Well, the first step is to log on to your PowerOptions account. We're going to go to the Married Put tab. Again, as I mentioned, we're going to follow the criteria that are discussed in the blueprint, which is already programmed in for you. We're going to click on the Search tool in the sub-tabs or from the Married Put Tools menu. This pulls up the default criteria, the RadioActive sorted by earnings per share growth, highest to lowest, based on the guidelines in the blueprint and what has worked for us for several years. Some of the stocks we've mentioned recently and some of the stocks that we've mentioned in the past, you can see here. We just discussed the AMD open position in the Fusion portfolio, as well as the Fortinet position. Ernie, I believe, is also an ELF. We considered Rambus and had that discussion a few weeks ago, as well as on holding, ON. What are the default criteria? Well, again, these are based on the rules in the blueprint, following the proper protected structure of the put we'd want to buy at least 150 days out in time. Limiting risk between 3.5% to 9.5%, and I may change that based on my personal risk tolerance and the limited risk I want to take on a position. We don't want to go more than 20% in the money, and some other basic criteria controlling the bid-ask spread on the position. But related to Bill's question, now we can also enter stock technicals and stock fundamentals. Basics for PowerOptions and for the RadioActive Trading default search, we're looking for stocks above the SMA 50 with a relative good volatility, good average stock volume, price range that we selected, earnings per share growth greater than 5%, and in our preferred stock list. We just talked about looking for stocks that are showing a recent crossover on the MACD and above their 20-day moving average. How can we simply adjust the criteria in the PowerOptions search to make sure we're only seeing positions that match that? Very simple. We'll go into the Technicals tab. As I mentioned, here we have our basics. We can change or adjust the average stock volume, the historical volatility, And we're currently looking for stocks that are trading above the 50-day moving average. Let's adjust that to be the SMA 20. Now down below, we have the criteria for the days over the MACD cross signal, meaning where that MACD has crossed over that signal line. Instead of looking for something that has been at least 1 day or 2 days or 3 days over, let's look for something that's more succinct. As Bill mentioned, let's look for stocks where the MACD has crossed over the signal line, let's say in just the recent past 4 or 5 days. And at the same time, we have this historical simple moving average trends criteria where you can look for stocks that have recently crossed over the SMA 20. Let's put that with less than 5 days as well. Leaving all the other criteria alone, let's go ahead and submit the search. And we have two, Dynatrace and OR, Osisko Gold Royalties. This doesn't mean these are the only two stocks that match that kind of technical trend that Bill was looking for. What it means is that these are the only two stocks in our preferred stock list with our preferred married put criteria that match this particular screen. Let's look at the stock chart at Dynatrace real quick, trading at $43.96. We could potentially buy the February 50 put for 2024, 287 days out, hopefully at the midpoint price of around $9.20. This is a nice controlled risk of 6.6% on the position, guaranteed better than a stop order. Is the stock chart what we want? Let's go ahead and take a look. Again, we'll use that more information button. We'll go to charts, and we're going to link to big charts where we can customize it to see the SMA 20, the MACD, and more. Nice little trend in the past 3 days. Stock has been middling, had a little bit of a decline, moved above the SMA 20, and then recently just gapped up and has that positive MACD that we're looking for, that little crossover there. That's a good trend, something that we saw in those other 4 or 5 recent positions where potentially we might feel that this stock has that potential to move up 3 to 6% in the next 20 to 40 days, and the potential to maybe move up another 3 to 8% over the next 60 to 90 days after that initial time period. What about the other security, OR, Osisko Gold Royalties? Following the trend, the mining stocks of WPM that Bill mentioned, the NEM position, Newmont Mining, that I'm in, and saw that recent pop. Let's take a look at charts again, and let's go to big charts. Recent gap up, this might be due to earnings. We could research that, but there we go. That little positive MACD crossover recently, jumping above the upper Bollinger Band, having a breakout, so to speak, that Bill had mentioned, the IBD breakout, closing above the upper Bollinger Band, and then the next day closing above it as well. Seeing a little pullback today with a hesitation. But seeing the positive trend with the MACD, with the breakout over the upper Bollinger Band. These are two positions that match. We did see that WPM was getting near to showing that positive crossover and had just moved above the SMA 20. However, it is possible that WPM is no longer in the preferred stock list that we want, or no longer is offering the risk that we want with the preferred married put structure, and did move above the 20-day moving average, might have that, not have the volatility, that we were looking for. But what we wanted to illustrate here is that with the starting point of the radioactive sorting by EPSG, we can change the various criteria that we want to meet our needs. 90 to 95% of all the positions that are posted in the Fusion portfolio at Radioactive Trading for the married puts with the 12 different income methods discussed in the blueprint, the portfolio of Ernie's a Renner, the Mike C portfolio as well, come from this direct search. Some changes might be made. For example, I might want to limit my risk on my positions to less than, say, 8%, rather than 9.5. Also, based on my particular portfolio, I might want to limit the stock price to say less than 105, less than 110, whatever your preference is. I can also adjust the variety of other stock fundamentals if I wanted to, market cap, dividend, if I just want to screen for dividend stocks, or as we mentioned, the stock technicals to look for that positive MACD cross in the last 4 or 5 or 6 days, or how many days has the stock been above or just recently crossed the SMA 20, SMA 50, or SMA 20 versus SMA 50, and of course, changing the criteria maybe the stock price being above the SMA 20 as opposed to the SMA 50. We can just submit that search, narrow the results down. Now we only have 20 results across the universe of options that match the preferred criteria discussed in the blueprint itself, and we can continue to do that, adjusting the technicals and much, much more. That's how easy it is to adjust the criteria. We saw the examples of what we look for on the recently forward positions that were opened: AMD, ASO, Ernie's in the ELF position still, as well as the WPM position, which prompted the question, Fortinet, NEM, and that Dynatrace position, the ON position, they also look very potentially good as well as Cisco Gold. But since I'm already in NEM, don't know if I want to jump into another gold or mining stock at this time in the Fusion portfolio. All of this follows the discussion in the blueprint. The full product on limiting risk, controlling risk, and stacking the market odds in your favor, and then having the advantage of the 12 to 13 different income methods you can use to lower that initial net risk, increase your potential profit, decrease your cost basis, and potentially bulletproof the trade. You want more information about that? Head over to PowerOptions, click on the store, check out the blueprint, or go to RadioActiveTrading.com. You'll see a free offer there to get the sketch, 9-page white paper, which outlines the initial process of the married put structure and gives you insight into the first of the 12 to 13 different income methods you can use to adjust the position, lower that initial low risk, and potentially bulletproof the trade.